Hello and welcome to the Garden of the Black Roses. This is chapter 9 of one of my original stories, Magic of Moonlight. So, chapter 9, Unwanted Information. Rita, Violet, Toby, emergency! Ember's voice flooded their link, startling the three and causing Toby to accidentally hit his head on the top shelf of his locker. What is it, Ember? Rita could sense Ember coming at full speed. Without slowing down, Ember grabbed her and continued on. What's going on? Trance. What is Trance's family history? Ember had grabbed Toby and Violet in a similar fashion before the three dived into a classroom, and Ember used her magic to seal it from the outside interference. Why? What has you so worked up this morning? Rita looked confused, her mind's eye showing that Ember had been skimming through an old book that she had fished out of Sebastian's bag before coming to find them. Sebastian had a book that His Majesty gave him. It was the book about the fourth king, the fake king, Faust. It outlined his family tree, but it stops before His Majesty's generation was born. She was breathing heavily. She was afraid that what she was suspecting was true. I know Trance has an abnormal obsession about me, but... Then let's find out, Rita replied. Together they joined hands, pooling their magic to aid Rita in her dive. They floated through history, watching the family line of Faust and his sister Fina. At the death of her brother, Fina declared the revenge that will be had against the moon goddess for taking away her only brother. Blinded by her grief, she sought a caster who placed a spell on their family line, causing them to be drawn to the next avatar of the moon to ensure only their family line would be the next king. History continued to flow as each of the subsequent avatars were pursued by a member of their family. Each time the true mate and king killed them to stop them, each generation producing two offspring, a pair of twins, one to carry on the family name, and the other to pursue the avatar of the moon. There finally came a stop at Trance and his sister Phoebe. So they are his family line, Ember murmured. Her heart hammered in her chest. The only difference now to before is that Sebastian has marked and mated me before Trance has had a chance to try and force it. That doesn't mean he won't try, Toby replied, as the four pulled out of the past and back into the present. He shook his head. Logan is going nuts. He said Sebastian and Raven seem frantic. He wants to know where you are. Sebastian. Ember, what happened? Was there something you saw or read? Sebastian. Ember cut him off. She had to think of a way to explain what happened. You know what you are, right? Do you really need the book to confirm it? The book His Majesty gave you was about the fourth king, Faust. She paused, taking a deep breath. His family vowed to ensure that they would take revenge on the moon goddess by keeping the avatar of the moon married to their family line. In so doing, ensure that the title of the Werewolf King remains in the hands of their family tree, breaking the promise that the moon goddess made that no family would be given sole rule over all werewolves. Ember, Where are you going with this? He was starting to grow worried. He had already suspected he was the next Werewolf King because of Ember's tattoo that marked her as the avatar of the moon. He wanted the book to confirm what was already in his head. But hearing Ember's mind-link voice sounding so shaky and scared, he wondered what exactly was in the old book that spooked her. Trance, a wolf in my class, has been obsessed with me for a long time. Before we discovered we were mates, he would tell me on my 16th that he would mark and mate me. He would make me his mate. She took another shaky breath. The other avatars drew close to her for support. He's of the same family line as Faust. A loud growl could be heard from outside. It rumbled through the building, causing many wolves to wonder who could let off such a powerful growl. Ember knew it was Sebastian. He was angry enough to unleash his half of his powers, acquired from their mate bond. Where are you? His mind link sounded strained. She could tell he was trying to control himself. I need to hold you, or I might lose control. Ground floor, 3rd classroom on the left. She paused before adding, rest your palm on the door before entering. My magic should let you and the others through. It wasn't long before all Ember could see was the ceiling. Sebastian held her in a tight hug, his body almost engulfing her own. Mine, he growled. He was taking deep inhales of her scent to try and calm himself down. Why didn't you tell me about trance sooner? I thought he was just an obsessed wolf who would back off when my true mate appeared, she replied in a whisper. I haven't seen him yet since our marking, but now that I know he's part of Faust's family line and the vow that Fina made, I don't think he'll give up so easily. He'll have to, or he'll lose his head, he growled back. He wasn't ready to let go of her just yet. He could feel the urge to go and immediately rip Trance's head off, still very much on the surface. Griffin wasn't helping much either. He growled and snapped in his head, trying to egg Sebastian on to go and deal with the pest now. I hate to interrupt this moment. Logan's voice sounded confused. But I still don't understand what's going on. Toby sighed lightly, causing Logan to look at him. You three are dense. Toby pointed to himself, Avatar of the future, then to Violet and Rita in turn. Avatar of the past. Avatar of the present. Avatar of the past. He turned and then pointed to what could be seen of Ember hidden in Sebastian's embrace. Avatar of the moon. The 3 future alphas stared at him and then at each other. Rita shook her head tiredly. This is not how we were supposed to reveal who was who, but circumstances require all of you to be present and on board with the situation. Knights. Situation? Caius asked. He could feel a different sort of power flowing over him, ancient and wiser than anything he had experienced before. It has to do with Sebastian almost going on a rampage? The 3 avatars nodded, and Violet gave them a quick rundown of what Ember learned from the old book. She told them about the dive into history and the confirmation about who Trance was and the vow that his family line made. So, we need you all to be on guard, Violet said with a sigh. Trance isn't going to be an easy problem to solve, especially if he's going to still target Ember despite her being claimed. The laws strictly prohibit that, Raven said with a sigh. If Trance kidnaps, touches, or violates Ember in any way... A growl from Sebastian interrupted him. Sebastian will be within his legal right to kill him for trying to take his mate. There is no law that covers unmarked mates, but because they are both marked, the law applies to them. He's not going anywhere near Ember long enough to touch her, Sebastian growled angrily. He could feel her hands trying to pat what part of his back she could reach. He buried his nose deeper against her neck. He needed to calm down. His aura as the future Werewolf King was outing him, like as if he had a huge neon sign over his head. Ember sighed and tried to shift her body, causing Sebastian to growl at her. I need to use my hands, Sebastian. For what? His voice was muffled by her hair. I need to summon His Majesty here, she replied with a sigh. Since the knights know who they are, things are progressing ahead of schedule. He may also be able to help coach you through calming yourself down again. He reluctantly let her go enough to allow her to nestle her back against his chest. He wrapped his arms around her again and nuzzled his nose against her neck. He watched curiously as she splayed her hands out, emitting a soft moonlight into the surrounding area. I call forth His Majesty, the Werewolf King. I call you forth into our presence by moonlight. The door opened and he stepped through, initially with a bright smile on his face, but once seeing the room, his expression turned somber. This doesn't look like it's going to be a good visit. Unfortunately not, Rita said with a sigh. The Faust's family line is causing troubles for the Avatar once again. Sebastian is unable to calm himself down. The Werewolf King stepped lightly over to where Sebastian was holding onto Ember in his lap. This is what normal wolves do to calm themselves down when angered. What I need you to do is something different for me. Tap into your source of power. Sebastian looked up at him, bewildered. That would make me stand out even more. For a moment, yes, the Werewolf King said, nodding. But as you get quicker, it won't be so obvious. Sebastian frowned before seeking out the power that emanated from his bond with Ember. He could distantly hear the king guiding him to follow the power along the bond to Ember's source. Immediately he felt relief. Unlike his source, that was fiery and angry, Ember's was calm and more tranquil. This presence in his mind, along with her scent and physical touch, brought his heightened anger back down again. Carefully, he moved back along the bond to his source. It was no longer fiery or angry. It burned steadily. It now exuded a calming and protective aura, much like his usual feelings and presentation towards Ember. He smiled and slowly let go of Ember herself, allowing her to stretch out her stiff joints from being held so tightly for so long. The more you do that, the more it will help you calm yourself, the king explained softly. And if Ember is anything like my Ebony, then she will need to do the same when anxious or worried. The protective aura will calm her, whereas her tranquil one will calm you. He took a seat, satisfied that Sebastian had now calmed down again, and was not alerting everyone to who he was. Now to the other issue. He sighed heavily. Ebony was kidnapped the day before we were to mark each other. We were waiting until her 16th to mark each other, as was customary at the time. Henry, the Faust family member who was obsessed with her at the time, decided to try and steal her away the night before her 16th, so he could force mark her. When I found them, I ripped his head off without remorse. She was so scared and marked me before I even got a chance to ask her if she was okay. Rita sighed. Now we have Trance, who is obsessed with Ember. The problem is that we don't know if he will stop because they are now marked, or keep going because of the spell on his family line. Spell? The king asked curiously. Rita quickly explained what they saw with the history dive they had done earlier. I see. I might have to consult the council on this one. I'll be able to link all of you now if I find something. He glanced at Sebastian, who smiled back at him. Graduation, Sebastian said. I'll name myself on graduation day. Good. The king looked extremely pleased. I'm longing to see my Ebony again. It's been so long. And that's it! Now, I do have chapter 10, but I haven't finished it. I've almost finished it, but I haven't finished it yet. But I am liking this story a lot. I've got a lot of ideas for it. Lots and lots of ideas for it. But yeah. I will see you in the next one, which I believe after this one goes up, it will be chapters from Dreams of the Undead, which is a fan fiction. But yeah, if you like it, comment, subscribe, like, help me out, please. Yeah. And I will see you in the next one. And as always, let your imagination run wild. Bye for now.